Stories are the most powerful thing on earth. They are literally life and death. Wars are waged based on the story of who is the hero and who is the villain. You are the result of a story your parents told each other, the one-night stand, the soulmate, and friends who became so much more. Life and death. So wouldn't you like to understand them better, these stories? How Story Works, an elegant guide to the craft of storytelling by Lani Diane Rich, demystifies stories and helps you understand why you love what you love, why you hate what you hate, and why prologues are almost always a bad idea. How Story Works by Lani Diane Rich. Available on Amazon in ebook, audiobook, and paperback form. Get your copy today.
Welcome to Still Pretty, a Buffy the Vampire Slayer podcast from Chipperish Media. I'm story expert and terrified old man staring at a quarterly statement and wetting himself, Lani Diane Rich.
And I'm film scholar and willing idiotic snack, Noelle LaCroix. And we're here today to talk about Into the Woods, the 10th episode of season 5.
Into the Woods aired on December 19th, 2000 and was written and directed by Marty fucking Noxon, y'all. I'm so pleased. I love her. I mean, I don't care for a lot of this episode, but I love her.
Did you know that story spoilers are good for you?
No.
It's true. I read that on a blog once, so it's fact.
Total
and because
fact.
we care about your health and safety here at Still Pretty, we are a fully spoiled Buffy podcast. Right now, I'd rather be here styling your beautiful new plastic dream hair, but let's go on patrol. In Into the Woods, the Scoobies wait at the hospital for Joyce's surgery to be over. The surgeon comes out and tells Buffy that they got the whole tumor. Joyce is going to be fine. She's going to be fine, y'all. Just fine. Buffy and Riley go back to the house to be alone and do adult alone time things, like getting Riley's insecurity tweaked again.
Don't sell yourself short. You stayed strong throughout, Buffy. You never even cried.
No, I cried. I cried so hard I didn't think I was going to be able to stop.
After what we can only presume to be mediocre sex, Riley rushes out into the middle of the night. Spike, who was outside stalking Buffy from her front lawn, follows him. The next night, when Riley sneaks out again, Spike walks into Buffy's bedroom and tells her he has to show her something. She goes with him and discovers Riley in a vampire prostitution/drug hovel of some sort. Our mixed metaphors are getting a little muddy here. And Buffy sees him letting a methed-out looking vamp lady suck on his arm. Buffy rushes out.
Buffy! We only came here because we care about you, friend.
Riley goes home to his apartment where Graham and the commandos are waiting for him. They want to take him on a mission. He has until midnight tomorrow to decide he wants to go with them. The next day at the Magic Box, everybody's making fun of Anya.
I can just hear you in private. I dislike that Anya. She's newly human and strangely literal.
When Buffy walks in on a mission to take out the vamp nest. They talk about it, and Giles says he was aware of that kind of thing, but felt that the unwilling victims and Glory are a higher priority right now. Buffy vehemently disagrees.
Are you coming with me or not?
What's the rush, Buff? If we're going into a nest, maybe we should come up with a strategy. Wait for Riley.
Back me up or not. I'm going.
They all head out to the vamp nest to find it abandoned, but with a propane camp stove flaming because, well, we all know how vampires love that open flame. Buffy tosses it against the wall, setting the place on fire. Meanwhile, Riley shows up at Spike's crypt and fake stakes him with a plastic stake, which I'm absolutely sure was purchased for sex play with Buffy, but let's not think about that. What's important here is that Spike's delight armor is at full power. And as Spike confesses his love for Buffy, he and Riley commiserate over how this woman is the source of all of their misery and not, you know, their own personal shortcomings.
Sometimes I envy you so much it chokes me. And sometimes I think I got the better deal. To be that close to her and not have her. To be all alone even when you're holding her. Feeling her beneath you. Surrounding you. The scent. No, you got the better deal.
Riley goes to the Magic Box to talk to Buffy, even though she's not interested in talking to him right now. They finally talk, and Riley blames her relationship with Angel, and for some reason Dracula, for his going to the dark side. At least the vampires needed him. He tells her about the offer from the commandos, that they leave at midnight.
Are you going?
I don't know. We can't work this out.
Then what? This is goodbye?
Buffy goes out into the alley and is set upon by the vamps from the drug den / cat house, and she takes them all out except the one who had been sucking on Riley's arm. Buffy lets her go, but then changes her mind at the last minute and throws a staff at her like a flying javelin, dusting her immediately. Then Xander comes out and hands Buffy a whole load of horse shit about how Riley's the one, Riley's the guy, you can't let Riley go, and somehow gaslights Buffy into racing out into the night after Riley. She gets to the helicopter, shouting Riley's name, but Riley can't hear her. Then Xander goes home to Anya, apparently realizing that everything he told Buffy wasn't about Buffy and Riley, but him and Anya, so oops, I guess.
I'm in love with you. Powerfully, painfully in love. The things you do, the way you think, the way you move. I get excited every time I'm about to see you. You make me feel like I've never felt before in my life. Like a man. I just thought you might want to know.
All right, Noelle, I am really enjoying this day because we are getting ready to rumble.
Oh, yeah.
I think this may possibly be one of the episodes upon which we disagree the most, which I think is going to make it really, really fun to talk about. Although I think we're both just like, I don't even know where you're coming from with each other, but I think it'll be fun. All right, so let's go ahead and start. What did you think about this episode?
Okay, so this is episode number 3 or 4 in this whole Joyce in the hospital series of episodes, and it is once again the same day or the next day or whatever, and it's like, here we go. But this is a whole new world. This is a whole new directorial field, and I just this is my Marty Noxon love and appreciation coming out right now. I actually really enjoy this episode in a lot of ways. I do think it's a huge bummer that the relationship between Buffy and Riley gets interesting only in the episode where it ends. But what an ending. The ending is the most interesting part of the relationship. And I love the way Marty Noxon takes all these not quite loose ends. They're more like stray fibers and tucks them into this thing that for one episode does a good impression of actual troubled relationship dynamics where two people are doing their best. And I don't mean doing their best as in acting in the most enlightened way possible. I mean, everyone everywhere has extraordinarily good reasons for doing what they do. And this is why fictional relationships are better than real ones, because we can see all the nuance and complexity and acknowledge that everyone is right, air quotes, in their own feelings without having to make any of that icky compromise stuff that goes on in like real relationships.
I find that so funny. Because
really?
Like my patience with Buffy and Riley ran out a long time ago. So honestly, I spend most of this episode just being glad that like we're inching toward this death that needed to come, right? I see everyone being their best. Like Buffy, first of all, has her responsibility in that she has never spoken to Riley. She's never wanted to speak to Riley when they've had stuff to talk about, aka when he slept with Faith, which also was not his fault. And somehow Faith managed to rape 2 people at once, which I think is, that's a discussion we've already had. But when they have stuff to talk about, they just don't. They just don't. And Buffy never wants to talk about it. So, I mean, that part I put on Buffy is that she is not willing to communicate. And she always gives him this line, I have given you everything of myself, my heart, my soul, my body. I'm like, your body, okay. Like, sure, you've let him enjoy that wonderland for a while. But the rest of it, no, you haven't opened up to him. You haven't, given him that. And that, like, I understand Riley feeling shut out. What irritates me about Riley, of course, as I've expressed a number of times, is that it's about she's not she's not breaking down enough with him. She's not weak so that he can be strong. You know, even she says, it bothers you that I'm stronger than you. And he's like, well, yeah, you know, but also this other stuff, which is all your fault. So it's your fault that I'm going out into the darkness. And he brings in Angel and Dracula. Dracula had Xander eating spiders. Dracula had Giles, you know, in the love pit. Which I'm not really sure how much of that was under Giles' control or not. You know, he was given the opportunity that many men his age don't get. Like, I get it, you know, forgiveness is there. But with Riley, you know, he can't see that Dracula might have had an effect on Buffy as well, and that somehow because she let Dracula bite her, this is a whole thing. So everything becomes her fault. Which is for her fault for things that are not her fault, not holding her responsible for the things that she is responsible for. And then just blaming all of his like drastically poor decisions on her. So my patience for this is just done. And the idea that, I mean, I think it's cool. Like, I love the fact that you enjoy this. I'm fascinated by it. Like, I really want to understand what it is about this that feels like I don't know, like a normal, healthy, or maybe not healthy.
No,
I don't
not
know,
healthy.
I want to hear more about that.
Okay, so it's interesting that you read Riley as blaming Buffy and blaming specifically, and, you know, bringing up Angel and Dracula, and she expresses some dismay at Dracula, and he says, I know that. Like, he is, throughout this whole thing, he is very, he's very calm and reasonable, but he is trying to express his feelings to her. Mm-hmm, he comes to her saying, this is how this felt to me. And when she's like, oh, please, like Dracula and Angel, he says, I know that intellectually, essentially, but emotionally it feels different. I don't see him putting a lot of blame on her. I see her doing a lot of projecting onto him a kind of, I don't know, like an unreasonable, like she is very, very, I mean, rightfully very angry with him, but is also not really in touch with her own feelings about their relationship in the same way that he seems to be. He seems to have done more reflection about what his emotional landscape is. Whereas
she hasn't been thinking about it. And the thing is, you know, like, granted, I think that's a very fair point. On one hand, you could be like, her mother was dying. Her mother was dying for like 3 weeks. Prior to that, though, she did not spend that much time thinking about Riley. Right. Like, I think there's something to, you know, Buffy took Riley for granted. That Buffy was never that into Riley, I think, is definitely something that's on the table. I think there are things that Buffy has done wrong. It's the specific way that Riley says, you did this, so I did this. I did this because they needed me. You don't need me. I love that. Like, that's petulant bullshit.
No,
I hate that.
Not.
I hate it so much.
Oh my God. Like,
yes, it is.
That guts me, and maybe this is me projecting because that is a very real need in a relationship to feel like you matter to the person that you're with.
You matter. Yes.
And he acknowledges that it's not like he knows that he doesn't have any sort of deep emotional connection with these vampires who are biting him, but that's not what he wants. What he wants is to be needed and to be desired. And Buffy does not desire him. And we have established that several times. Right.
But there's a difference between being like, I think that the need to be needed is something that needs severe side eye, because being needed means that they need you, so they can't choose you because they need you.
Well, we all need each other in relationships, though.
To a certain degree. Like, there's a certain, but like, honestly, like, the need to be needed is something that tweaks me a little bit, because, you know, if she's strong and she's, you know, capable and she can handle her own shit and she doesn't need him, but she chooses him, but she wants him. Now that's where it falls off. She doesn't want him. Like, that's pretty clear. Like, and I think that she's made that pretty clear. Like, he's there and he is, you know, amusing or whatever, you know.
He's dependable is what she says
right,
to Xander.
Dependable. Like, there's
which
a
is
lot of
so
things like that.
Icky. Oh my god.
Yeah, no,
God.
absolutely.
Absolutely
it is.
I just hate Buffy in this episode. I mean, I try to see things from her perspective, but I just hate her in this episode.
No, all of her with Riley. Like, the thing is that Buffy has done things wrong, but the things that Buffy has done wrong are not the things that Riley is focusing on. And the way that Riley is blaming her for his choices, you know, for the things that he is doing, I find really, really weak.
I don't think he blames her. In that, I don't see blame.
I did this because you let Dracula bite you.
He says he wanted to understand. He wants to understand the connection. Yeah. She clearly has a connection with these vampire dudes that she doesn't have with him. And he wants that. He wants connection with her. He wants something beyond passion, which is what he says he gets from the vampires, which is a really interesting thing to say. But he also wants that connection. There is something between Buffy and Angel and something between Dracula and Buffy that he doesn't have. And he doesn't have access to, and he is trying to access it, is the way that his side of their confrontation comes across to me. That it's not, I blame you. It's not, you have to be with a man who's part monster, so I'm going to go make myself a monster for you. Like, it's not that, like, that's not how I read it at all. I read it as, like, my partner is into this thing. I don't get it. I don't even know what it is. Let me go, like, let me try this and see if I can understand. And then he, accidentally falls into this, oh, wait, this gives me something that I didn't realize I was missing, which is a very real experience in relationships. You can't know that something is not there if you've never experienced it. So if he goes out and experiences this level of physical need from someone else to him that he's not getting with Buffy, it's a huge, like, this is a huge light bulb. This is why I fucking love Marty Noxon writing relationships, by the way. Because Marty Noxon gave us this in New Moon Rising also. This, like, it's not my fault if I can't give you the thing that I don't have. You know? Like, but it still sucks for you. Like, it's still, it's no fun to be like, I need this in a relationship, and to have the other person be like, I am not capable of giving that to you. Which is really the wall that Buffy and Riley end up slammed into at the end of this, is he needs something from her that she doesn't have to give him.
Right.
And
well, you know what's,
I mean, that is my read on this whole thing. And again, like, this is another thing that I love about fictional relationships, is that it is completely, like, as much as I say I hate Buffy in this episode, I can completely see her side of this, like, really shitty situation. But also, she's terrible to Riley.
She is terrible to Riley. She never talks to him, but she always tells him she gaslights him with that. But what's funny, though, because she's always saying, I give you everything of me. I give you my heart, my soul, my everything. You give him nothing.
She believes that. That's what works for me. What totally works for me is that
she never wants to talk to him.
She never wants to talk to him. Yeah. And she is always, they're always so out of sync, and they're specifically out of sync physically. And we've established this multiple times. Like, they're slow dancing at her house, and she says, I feel so relaxed. And he's like, already? We know that sex with Riley is relaxing for Buffy, which is not really his goal. Because again, he wants that passion. Like, he wants the fire. He wants the passion. He wants the bitey stuff, which is great. I'm into it. But we get it. We get it here again that she's relaxed and he's looking for this like spark and it's not there. And then, oh my God, thank you, Dawn, for bringing us into the, so we can get Dawn out of the house so we can boink, so we can have loud, obnoxious sex. And then they do neither. Like, it is neither loud. I mean, maybe it's obnoxious, but it's not good, you guys. Like, it does not look good.
Fun. The sex with Buffy and Riley does not.
It never looks like fun. Ever.
Right. This is the funny thing, though, because as you're talking and you're talking about this from the perspective that you see it from, and then I'm looking at it from the perspective that I see it from, and you said a thing, maybe I'm projecting, and I'm like, oh, I am completely projecting, right? Completely projecting, because I had a man in my life who needed to be needed, and the way that he did that was through abusing me and my kids and making me feel weak. Like I wasn't good enough, so that I would need him, right? He needed me to be weak so that he could be strong because he came in weak, right? So I've had that experience, right? So the idea of somebody like requiring the woman to be weaker than him, I think triggers a very specific, oh, fuck off thing for me, because of my personal experience. So I will say, I think that I understand, I can see your perspective on it. And as you're talking, I'm thinking about your perspective on various things. And I'm like, oh, yeah, I kind of get that. I kind of see where you're coming from. So I think the bottom line is you can love it and be legit, and you can hate it and be legit, but the role of fiction is really to give us a place to kind of walk through those experiences, and that's why these different responses that people have to these things are all legit. I mean, I'm not going to say that I understand anybody who, like, when Riley leaves is like, oh wow, I'm gonna miss that guy. Like, I don't I maybe don't understand that, but I'll respect it. I'll respect it. People who love Riley for a reason. And I hate Riley for a reason. And what I see, what speaks to me, the frequencies that are turned up the loudest for me are different from the frequencies that are turned up the loudest for you here. So I find that just really super interesting.
Yeah. It is really fascinating. And I love that we come at this from completely different perspectives.
Yes.
And that is, even something as simple as the idea of being needed in a relationship, that.
Right. I'm against that.
Well,
I'm against being needed in a relationship.
But that concept alone is so nuanced. And, so for you, like, that idea goes in this very toxic direction. And I mean, by and large, I agree with you. Like, I don't want to I don't enjoy being needed in that way. What I do enjoy is being, this is, okay, here we go with like another really nuanced and potentially problematic phrase, but being taken for granted. Being taken for granted in the sense that, Buffy says that Riley is dependable. That was something that she liked about him.
Yeah.
But Xander calls her on it and says, I think what you really mean is convenient. There is a being taken for granted in the sense that I know that I can trust this person to do what I tell them. I take for granted that if I give you this task to do, or I take for granted that if I give you this secret to keep, that you are going to follow through and, honor the relationship that we have. That's being taken for granted. That's not being taken for granted in the sense of, what Buffy says to Joyce when Joyce is like, hey, don't you want to spend some time with Riley? And Buffy's like, oh, I can see him anytime.
Right.
Like, no big deal. And that's, so again, like the idea of being dependable or being reliable or even taken for granted, which I think is a phrase that a lot of people would bounce really hard off of, just personally for me, I have this whole thing about it's actually like within a relationship that is balanced, where you are, you know, where all of the parties involved are striving to be of service to each other and to the relationship, being taken for granted feels awesome because it means you count on me. Like, you trust me enough to know that I will follow through and that you don't have to check on me.
Right.
So it's like, it's fascinating. It's fascinating
it is
what
really
fiction
fascinating.
brings up.
It is, and this is why fiction is such goddamn magic. I mean, it really is, you know, but I find that so interesting. And you know, and I don't necessarily really disagree with what you're saying. I just see it so differently. Like the resonant parts are different for me than they are for you in this, and I kind of freaking love that.
Well, and how you read something is so shaped by your own experience, not, you know, the general you. Like when Buffy says that, you know, Riley says, oh, you were so strong, you know, about her mom being in the hospital. You didn't even cry. Yeah. And Buffy's like, oh, I cried a ton. What are you talking about? But that's over now. And then she leans in and hugs him and he goes, oh. Right. And I read that as a little like, this is another nail in the relationship coffin. It's not that he needed her to cry to him, but the fact that she didn't trust him. Like, there's that level of being a safe space for someone or being a real partner to someone. I'm not sure it's about stronger versus weaker. I think it's about that exchange of energy in a relationship, which again, Marty Noxon is putting all of this in here for me this episode. This is not like all of this nuance in the Buffy Riley dynamic. I'm not sure exists much prior to this episode. I'm pointing fingers at Marty Noxon. This is her fault that I like this. I mean, I don't enjoy it.
Like Riley.
Like, it's a bummer. It's a bummer to see people be out of sync in their relationship. It's a bummer to see people not talk about shit. It's a bummer to see people get their hearts broken or be, you know, upset. But it's also something that we go through in our relationships, not just romantic relationships, but like relationships, full stop. And she's a fucking wizard. Marty Noxon is a wizard. That's all I've got.
Yes. No, she is. She is. She's really, really great. And like, you know, I hate a lot of this episode. Like, I just really super hate it. But I think that it's well done. I think that what Marty Noxon is doing here definitely does have a lot more nuance and a lot more, I think, complication and interest than necessarily what we've had before. It's just my patience is already worn out. I'm already sick of this be weak so I can feel strong thing. That obviously gets no truck with me. So yeah, I find it really interesting. We also have so Riley's cat house / drug hovel.
So fascinating.
What is this? And you know, and the idea, like, also like that he has this, they specifically chose this actress who's extremely thin, right? And they highlighted this emaciated look for her, right? Which is something that we associate with, you know, some particularly very addictive drugs, right? That there are some that make you lose an extreme amount of weight. And so we have that look, that really like hungry, drugged out look from her. But also, like, her job is to eat all day, right?
Well, I mean, it's how she presumably, I mean, well, and like, who even knows? Like, clearly are
they on drugs? Is it a vampire drug?
Don't think so.
Do they dose up the humans with drugs and then drink their blood so that they get the high from it? I don't understand what this place is.
I think, okay, I mean, the real answer is that it's not a thing, it's a feeling. So,
yeah,
you know, it's very much in the spirit of the show, much more about how it feels than about what it literally is.
Yes.
But, you know, this is the clearest it's ever been. You know, we talked last time about whether allowing oneself to be bitten by a vampire is a metaphor for sex or for drugs. And in the Vamp Nest house, it's a little bit of both.
It's an everything.
It's a little bit of
all
everything
mixed up together.
It's a little bit of everything, but this particular vampire who has a little moment with Buffy that we'll talk about in a minute, I suspect. I think I get the impression that there is some sort of a hierarchical, like, sex work, imbalance of power kind of relationship among these vampires. Like, yeah, she gets to eat, but maybe not as often as she would like. Almost certainly not as often as she would like, because she looks terrible. And of course, that's playing into some really complicated ideas about women and desirability. And, you know, Buffy is very negative about the vampires that Riley is seeing, and really really invested in the narrative around women and worth, and, you know, the sex work shamey vibe is very strong in this episode. And yes, I understand that they're vampires, they're demons, right?
Yeah.
And we can go a little harder on that, but it's still
right. But even Giles was like, yeah, I know about this, but they're willing victims, and it seems like we're busy enough.
I also love Giles being like, oh, I haven't seen it since my Ripper days. And I'm like, did Giles pay to get bitten? Because, tell me more.
Fuck yeah. That's what the tattoos are covering up. I'll bet you anything. Riley, or Ripper.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Yeah, Ripper definitely has that. But here's the thing. You were talking about the choices, Buffy's relationship with these vampires. And I also find that very interesting.
Yeah.
Moments of choice are, of course, like everything within character. What they choose to do is the most important thing when you're telling stories and you're trying to develop a character. So while I'm not that interested in Buffy and Riley right now, like my gas ran out in that tank a long time ago, I kind of love these choices that she makes with the vampires, not because I love the choices themselves, but because I don't understand them and I'm still trying to figure out what it means, right? So we have Buffy like going in, because there was also this like, tell me about your whores, tell me about your cheating, you know, all of that stuff, which I don't think was exactly what he was doing, but there was a sexual element. I mean, when she's sucking on his arm, like, you know,
and he's shirtless, like
it is sexual.
It's not,
in like,
not sexual. How about that?
And when he says it wasn't real, it was just physical, gives me that cheating metaphor. So it's cheating, drugs, and like prostitution, rock and roll. It's all of these things, right? All at once, right? Okay, so Buffy insists on going in. She brings all the Scoobies with her.
Yeah.
Everybody's gone, but they've left an open propane campfire thing behind, which I find hilarious because, you know, three things kill vampires. They can't buy an electric light or a hot plate, you know. They got to have an open flame. So she tips that over, right, and lights the place on fire. But this place shares walls with other businesses that we would presume are not vampire nests. Mm-hmm. So that feels off to me. Then we have this moment where the vampires, where all of these people surround her in the alley. All of these vampires who ran and abandoned the nest that they had because they were afraid of her, jump her in the alley, right? So she's surrounded by this circle of vampires. And they're like, oh, the pyro thing was not or whatever they were taunting her about, right? And then she says, just walk away. Just walk away right now, right? Which, fine if it's a fight, if it's a human coming to you and being like, I'd like to tear your hair out, you know, and you're like, you know what, walk away because I will destroy you. I'm a slayer. But they are vampires. Like, slaying them is kind of what she does. Why does she want to let them go? Then they attack, so she ends up killing them all, except this one. The one that Riley was with, right? So she pulls her staff back, right? Or whatever it is, her javelin, whatever it is she had, right?
Yeah.
I think it was the staff from one of the vampires. And then this woman runs terrified for her life, right? And Buffy watches her with this cold expression and then throws it at her. Now, the thing is, had she just staked her, like in that moment, just staked all of them in that moment, I would have been like, yeah, okay, fine. You know, because it's not like she's going after the woman that Riley was with. This is a vampire. This is her job. This is what she does. These vampires are not going to go out and be fruitful members of society. They're going to kill people, right? And the thing with Buffy is that she's always about protection, right? Anything that poses a danger, she kills. She's not about punishment. She's about protection, which is why Spike is still alive. I mean, aside from the Delight armor, Spike can't hurt anybody anymore. There's nobody to protect from, him from, right? So, or protect from him. So she lets him live, right? And she does that with anybody who's not posing a current threat. But all of these vampires pose a current threat. So there is no moral question for her. She's very solidly on Slayer, vampire, this is how we dance ground here, right? So this whole thing is just like a question, like that hesitation and then changing her mind and dusting that vampire feels to me like it's making some kind of negative commentary on Buffy.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure what that is.
Buffy javelin staking the vampire who bit Riley sucks, and I hate it. I hate it so much.
But I don't mind her doing it because she's a vampire. It's like she doesn't do it because she's a vampire. The hesitation and the choice is she does it because this is the vampire that was with Riley. So we're making that clear. And it's not a flattering light for Buffy.
And it's just a weird moment. And I mean, I will allow Buffy a weird moment in all of this.
Right.
Like, I feel like if there were ever going to be a moment for Buffy to have some weird moments, this would be the time.
Sure, right.
But the whole thing, I do not like it. I don't like it. And I get that we're supposed to be with Buffy in her emotions. She's not acting. I think the just walk away and the kind of, I don't really want to do this, is she's not in Slayer mode. She's in betrayed, hurt girlfriend mode is maybe what that's about.
I'm not in the mood to kill you now. Come back on Tuesday.
Pretty much.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay.
But it also points up for me this thing that the show has kind of done a little bit, like little bits here and there of how much human is there in the vampire? How much agency is there? Are vampires just animals, essentially? And if they are, this particular one, I get the sense from that moment with the vampire, the, skinny, kind of mangy vampire who was biting Riley, that it could go one of two ways for me. One is the show is trying to do, there's more humanity in vampires than we really want to talk about. The other way is this is an animal, but it's a scared, sick animal, and it's not going to last. Like, she does not look well. That vampire is not going to go and turn a bunch of people or, wreak a bunch of havoc. She's going to go crawl under a porch somewhere and die. Like, she really... I don't believe that vampire is a threat to anybody.
Right.
At least the way she's shot, the way we get that moment of her fear before she runs. I don't think she has any power over anybody. And I think that is maybe I think that maybe that's where we're supposed to be with Buffy, that this is like, it's not that Riley was like seduced by the powerful forces of darkness. Like that Riley like deliberately made this choice, and it's not about how powerful the demon forces. It's about something else. I don't know. I don't think it's great. I'm with you in I'm not totally sure what it's supposed to say about Buffy.
Right.
I don't like it. It does not feel good to me, and I think it's supposed to not feel good.
I think so too.
Yeah, there's a lot in this episode where I'm like,
there is.
I like how this is done. Like, I love the nuance. I love the complexity. Like, but Buffy turning over the camp stove or whatever it is in the vamp nest, I'm just like, really? Okay.
It burned down the whole run of, it's not a house out in the middle of nowhere.
Right.
It's attached to other houses, other businesses, other places.
You
like
get in through the alley, right? Like you get in through the back door, whatever.
And so that seems something that, like, you know, one of the Scoobies would have been like, oh, wait, no. You know, we can't do that. Let's call the fire department or something, because that, you know, I don't know. It's all really weird. But one of the things that's interesting here, though, is that Marty Noxon is not just the writer, but also the director.
I know, and I love it.
Yeah,
I love it so much. And this is where I'm kind of bummed that we are a podcast and not a YouTube show.
Oh, yeah, because you want to use those visuals?
Because I want to use the visuals. Like, I want to step everybody, like, through the visuals of some of these moments, because, you know, I've been, you know, raving about how wonderful Marty Noxon is with relationship, but she gives us that visually as well. Like, it's not just in the writing. It's in the direction, and it's in the visual, you know, it's in the composition. It's in what the camera is doing and who the camera is looking at, and all of these, like, really crucial choices that help to shape this emotional reality that we are experiencing. So I hope this is not terribly obnoxious, because we are an auditory sensation. But I am gonna step us through a couple of sequences visually that I absolutely love, because they have that same Noxonian delight for me, but in visual form. So, I mean, right out of the gate, the hospital, we opened in the hospital. Joyce's surgery was at 10 in the morning. And it looks like it's 5 till 1 when we open the episode. So it's been a while. Dawn is asleep on Buffy's lap, and Riley is in the chair beside them. And at first glance, they look like a cohesive little family unit. Right. In the, you know, capital A, capital R, American romanticism tradition of, we have a father, a mother, and a child. Right. Kind of a tableau. But we hold on this shot of the three of them long enough to really take in the body language. Buffy and Dawn spread out on this wide bench, while Riley is confined to a chair that's a little bit too small for his hulking caramel frame.
I think that's all chairs, though, because Riley's kind of a big dude.
He's kind of a big dude, but he is kind also like, they have space to spread out. He is confined, and he's not man spreading. Like, he's got his arms pulled in and his hands folded. Symbolically, he is squeezed into this family dynamic where he doesn't fit. Yeah. And then when they all stand to meet the doctor, Dawn and Buffy have this light on them, and Riley is mostly in shadow.
Oh, that's interesting.
And this is also the case when they're sitting, with Buffy and Dawn sort of literally blocking the light that would otherwise hit Riley on the side of his face. Wow. But it's much more pronounced, and I want to say it's much more deliberate when they stand up and wait for the doctor to tell them the news. That here they are in the light, and he is hanging. He's in the background, and he's also in shadow. Which is great, because we're going to address Riley's shadow a little later on, but also he's in the background for Buffy. Yeah. He's not part of the story that is Buffy and her family. And then Buffy steps forward from the group, and the camera dollies forward to focus on Buffy's face faster than the doctor is walking towards her. Yes. It's the camera move equivalent of that sharp intake of breath, you know, when you're bracing yourself for some news. I mean, go back and watch it and see if you breathe in there. Like, I definitely do. And then we just get to wait, because it's time for the opening credits and a word from our sponsors. And I fucking love it. I love it. We just, shit. We're just like on the brink of finding out. But then you have to hold your breath for all of the commercials, or while you would run and make yourself a sandwich. Do you remember that? Right. I kind of missed that.
Yeah, having those little breaks, those little commercial breaks.
Yep.
Yeah, I don't miss it, but yeah, I remember it.
I miss it. I kind of, not enough to want to recreate it necessarily, but I do miss it. And then another just like gorgeous visual story that we get is in the vamp house, nest, drug den, bordello. I don't know.
Whatever.
All of the above.
Right, exactly.
All of the above. The whole set of that vamp nest house is just gorgeous. And we mostly follow Buffy's reactions, which is to say the camera is on her face as she advances into the house. Yeah. And the camera is dollying back as she moves forward. So as Spike and Buffy enter the house, Buffy passes through partial shadow and then complete shadow, such that we lose her face completely for a moment, which is a really interesting choice, right? Like you really want to stay with your protagonist's face as much as possible. So to lose her briefly in the shadow says to me that she is moving through this space of like losing, like we lose her for a minute. We lose contact with the Buffy that is going to see this and maybe react in a more calm, don't burn the entire place to the ground kind of way. But it's also lovely because as we continue to move through the house, and Buffy opens the door to reveal Riley, the lighting tells us everything we need to know about the situation. Her face is in shadow, patches of light here and there. We see Riley. We can see that Riley is not wearing a shirt, which again, kind of sexy. And his full face is in shadow.
Right.
He's complete, but of course we know who it is. We know who it is because we know what he's up to, but we know who it is. We know that Buffy knows who it is, even though we can't see him. And then when he says Buffy, only his mouth is in the light. So it looks like he's wearing a mask or a black hood almost pulled over his eyes. It's very, very good visual representation of Riley's relationship to this world. It's something he puts on. It is a cover of darkness. But it's also starting to erase his humanity.
Right.
Which is just
interesting.
See, I say it gets the most compelling in the episode where it ends, which I mean, and maybe that's best. Maybe like quit while you're ahead. I don't know.
Maybe.
Quit while your head is in the cover of darkness. I'm not sure. It's
those are really, really cool things. And I hadn't really noticed it, but as you're talking about it, I'm like, oh yeah, I can see where you're talking about that use of shadow and how carefully it was used throughout this episode. But what I find funny, I think what I find most interesting and most compelling about this episode, and I know this is going to come as a shock, so I hope that you are sitting down at the moment, but it's really Spike, right? Spike is outside stalking Buffy while she has sex with Riley. It's creepy and weird, but it's supposed to be creepy and weird. He's a vampire. So like his creepy and weird stuff is not okay, but it's okay because the text is not rubber stamping it as okay, right? Because he's a vampire. But his complication here, like the moment when he goes in and Buffy's naked in bed and she's like, I have to get dressed. And he turns his back to her and he's like, oh, please, like I give a damn. And then you see the look on his face where he's just like, oh my God,
He has to hide. He has to hide that how much of a damn he gives. It's great.
Oh, he gives so much of a damn, But I love this moment. Like he brings Buffy to see what Riley's doing. He's so proud of himself. This whole like, look what I did. Yep. I showed you this guy's not, he's so proud of himself. He runs outside and he says, I just thought you should know. Right. And then he sees her face and you see the expression on his face change. So what James Marsters does with a simple reaction look is unbelievable. It conveys the shock of empathy, right?
Yeah.
Or I don't even know if it's empathy because but that he doesn't want her to hurt. He didn't realize how much this was going to hurt her. He thought she'd be angry and, furious, and then she'd break up with Riley, and then he'd pick her up. Like, his fantasies about how this was going to go were so not anywhere related to reality. And when he sees that, not that Riley hurt her, but that he hurt her, and the reaction to that, I think, is just so beautifully done. I love it. And I actually really like his talk with Riley too. I hate the fake staking. That drives me crazy. It's a cheap goddamn move. And no, but of course when you do the like if you do the work to be like, well, he and Buffy clearly had this sex toy lying around, and he knows that if he actually staked Spike, that maybe Buffy would not be pleased about it. And
yeah,
so I mean, maybe like if you read that into it, then maybe, but it's such a cheap move that you're like, oh my God, he staked Spike and the Delight armor has stopped working. And then you come back and Spike's reaction, that was, ow, wait.
Yeah.
I love that.
I
love
enjoy the
his
fake
reaction.
staking. I sort of file it in the same category of behavior as tipping over the camp stove. I am so fucking angry right now and I need to do something really violent and serious. So I'm going to set this building on fire, or I'm going to stake Spike, but not stake him.
But why not? Why not actually stake Spike? Aside from the fact that Buffy might be pissed about it, which, by the way,
Riley is a little bit. I think Riley is a little bit in love with Spike in a way.
Okay.
Like, I think there's not in a way that he has any access to, but he's so funny posturing with Spike too, because he's like, if you touch her, I'll kill you. And Spike's like, oh yeah, right. Like, and I would have killed you a long time ago. First of all, I love them butting heads about I'm totally going to kill you. No, I would have killed you, blah, 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 blah. But then, Riley's like, if you touch her, I'll kill you. And Spike's like, yeah, right. And also, I don't like I have a chance.
Right.
Riley's
like if I touched her, she would kill me before you got a chance to kill me.
Right. It's so funny because Riley, Riley is feeling all of the things at once. It's this guy has the hots for my girl, but he's never got a chance, except he totally does. And Riley, know it. It's really interesting. That
it is really interesting, and I love
Riley dynamic. I love so much.
I love it, and I love when they sit down and have a drink together, and they just start talking about it. I mean, I'm annoyed at both of them because they're both blaming Buffy for all of the things or whatever.
It really
it's all
is
about
like
her.
women, man.
It's
women.
Women, exactly. And I'm like, no, you guys are both fucked up, and you need to look at yourselves, because if it wasn't Buffy doing this to you, it'd be some other chick because you're a mess. Yeah.
And I think that's the delight for me in that scene is they're both just such a mess, and they're so
and they're bonding over it. It's kind of nice. I like it. I also like the way that Spike does not even try to pretend that that's not the case. He's just like, yep.
He does not care. It's so funny. I love Spike not taking Riley seriously enough to lie to him. He's just like, yeah.
Exactly. He doesn't care. He does not care. But it's a really wonderful scene. And it's the most I've enjoyed Riley, I think, probably ever. But then we have, of course, this big speech at the end with Xander after Buffy and Riley have their big fight.
Yeah.
The speech is stupid and gaslighty for me. Does not work for me. She's actually, I think, having a reason to be upset. He dumps all this on me. I find this out, and then he's like, I'm leaving at midnight unless you give me a reason not to, which is, fuck you, Riley. You decide what you're going to do. You know what this relationship is. Are you going to say, okay, I accept that and quit your whining, or are you going to go? You decide. It's not up to her. You know, it's his decision. He has to decide what he wants, you know? And when she says, it's not my decision to make, absolutely right. But again, he's putting that pressure on her that, like, I'm going to make this decision based on what you do, which is bullshit. So I've had enough of Riley at this point. And then having Xander come in and be all, this is the guy. If he's the one, the once in a lifetime, you were treating him like a rebound guy, but he's the one. No, none of that is true. All of that is gaslighting. None of this is true about Riley. This is not who Riley is. This may be who Riley is for Xander.
I think
he might be the one for Xander, but not for Buffy. I mean, Xander's clearly in love with Riley, and you know what? Go ahead. Everybody's got a Captain America kink. Like, go for it, you know?
I do not enjoy the Xander ex machina.
Yeah.
But I do think he's correct about a lot of things.
Oh, I think he's correct about nothing. What is he correct about?
I love him advocating for Riley. I love him saying, you know, Buffy says he's dependable and Xander says he's convenient. You wanted him around when you wanted him around and then not when you didn't. You know, he was something that Buffy was using to fulfill this very specific need of hers. And I think Xander points it out. But I also, the issue that I take with Xander here is that where did this come from? Like, what? Like, literally, where was Xander this whole time? What is going on?
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, we've had him. He was there when Riley said, "But she doesn't love me."
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And Xander had that sudden feeling of, oh, he's confiding in me. Like, so he had that, like, that, you know, wonderful little bit of that crush going on. But I think that he's been seeing things, and he had that whole thing where he was making a Buffy Riley metaphor, and then Anya was like, "No, I like you."
That's right.
You know.
Yeah.
So we've had him kind of hinting at this for a while. But he is so incorrect in the way that he comes at Buffy. And that ultimatum of Riley's is, you know, I'm going to leave unless you give me a reason not to. No, you leave if you want to.
Well,
you know what this relationship is. You make that choice for yourself. You don't put that on Buffy.
It's a tricky way of, he's not asking for what he needs, which is he needs to say, like, Xander actually says it better than Riley says it. Which is, if you don't, he says, Xander, too many people, start over. Xander says to Buffy, if that is not something that you have to give to him, you got to let him go. And I think that what Riley doesn't ask for what he needs, which is a confirmation of some kind of passion from Buffy. I think that's what the whole hit me thing is about.
Right.
I think it's about, I need to feel some sort of an emotional connection with you, even if that you know, and we know that Riley has to experience things through his body. So when he says hit me, I think what he's really saying is, like, give me some sort of indication that there's any kind of fire in you for me, even if it is that you are angry enough to lash out at me.
Right.
But he's not, you know, he's not articulating that. He's not asking for what he needs. And it's Xander who points out to Buffy, like, this guy is here for you. But if you don't have the love to give to him that he needs to make this relationship a relationship, you got to let him go.
Yeah.
And then that's when it gets a little twisty for me. Like, I think Xander is absolutely correct that in saying, Buffy, you need to make up your mind. Like, you are not, you're not treating this guy fairly. You need to make up your mind. But then it does end up getting twisted into this, you know, Xander is very much on Team Riley because Xander does spin it as you can't let this guy go.
Right.
Which is shitty. Xander doesn't really let her make a decision. But also, like, now is not the time. Like, you know, of course, it has to be before midnight, right? We have to be able to resolve this tonight because that's what makes the narrative interesting.
Right.
But No, like you don't have these like upsetting conversations when somebody is already upset. And that is the problem. And also,
well, and he's lecturing her on this rather than like asking her and listening to her. You know, he's acting as if he knows everything and he doesn't.
It's interesting. He definitely sees more of the reality of the Riley Buffy dynamic than Buffy does. But also, like, now is not the time, bruh. Like, except, of course, that it's going to be, you know, the clock is ticking and you got to run for the helicopter or whatever, some, you know, fairy tale romantic.
Oh, God.
Tropey.
And then she runs for it. He can't hear her. And the fact that she's running there shouting for Riley is so irritating. She has not wanted him this whole time. Let the dude go.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, let him. And if Xander's like lecture at that point had been, you don't want him, you never wanted him, let him go. You know, if that had been Xander's thing, I would have been into it. But then we move into, from this whole speech, you know, from Xander to Buffy, we actually end, and it's fun because like where you end in an episode is hugely, in a story is hugely important. The ending tells us what it all really means, right? Because how it ends. And, you know, we have Buffy walking home dejected after running miles in those boots. I don't even know. There must be some Slayer foot strength that just can handle wearing whatever kind of shoes and running them. But we end on this moment with Anya where Xander walks in and he says, I love you. I think you should know this. I love you powerfully and painfully and all of this stuff. He gives her this whole big, you know, this whole big speech. And so in the end, like, I like that Xander has realized that he doesn't appreciate Anya, that he doesn't express to her, because he talks down to her so much. The way that he talks to her drives me crazy. And for him to come in and tell her how he feels. Now, if it changes the way that he treats her from here on out, then okay, lesson learned and we've gone somewhere. I don't have a memory of it doing that. We'll see.
I think it does. I think
he remains exactly the same.
I don't remember anything changing between them immediately after this, but we'll see.
I would like it to be a transition point. I would like to be remembering it incorrectly, but as we move through, I have a feeling I'm going to be disappointed. But I do like this moment, though, where we have this textual acknowledgement from Xander that while he's telling Buffy how great Riley is, he is failing to appreciate how fucking lucky he is to have Anya.
Mm-hmm.
You know? And so when he goes and tells her that, I actually really like it.
I bounced so hard off of that moment with Xander, and I don't totally know why.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why. I wonder. When I was watching it, two things. I really wish that I could be in my head the first time I watched this episode, because my life and my relationships and my ideas about relationships were very, very different. But I don't remember how I responded to this the first time through, but I bounced so hard this time. And I was thinking, is this how women who love men romantically want their want their partners to talk to them? Like, cause it felt very written to me, and it felt very much like a specific kind of fantasy about something a man would say. And I do not like it, but I wonder if that's because it's not for me.
That is really interesting. Because to me, I look at it and I think, well, regardless of the gender, I think you would want, like, it's nice to hear stuff like that from the person that you're involved with. At the same time, I think there is like a general understanding of men where, you know, they're strong and silent and they don't say the things, you know. Is that actually true, or is that our cultural presumption? You know, I don't know. 6 of one, half a dozen of the other, right? But it's interesting because I never really thought about it as a specifically heterosexual kind of dynamic there. But that's a really interesting I clearly have to watch more lesbian romance, right? To see how is it different? How are the ways in which the ideal expression is put into fiction, like directed at different gender groups.
Well, he ends with, "You make me feel like a man."
Yeah.
Which, okay, that tracks for me in terms of Xander and like his goals and desires, but I don't know. Like I didn't enjoy it, not because there's anything, like it didn't strike me as like especially egoic or icky, which we do get from Xander.
Yeah, we do. Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I didn't care for it. I like Xander being good to Anya. That I enjoy. Yeah. But the way that it's shot, the way that it's written, it feels like this big, swell of the orchestra romantic moment. And I just went, well, no.
I mean, I can understand that because part of it, like the romance of it didn't really work for me, like the big romantic moment, because it's unearned. We haven't been focused at all on the romance between Xander and Anya. We haven't had any of this. So none of this has been, even in this episode, we haven't built up to this. So it just comes at us seemingly nowhere, Yeah. And while I think it's way past goddamn time that Xander appreciated the fact that he is not really worthy of Anya, I think that like it's nice to see that because I've had enough of that. But yeah, like we haven't built this up. This episode was not about Anya and Xander, not even in the scene in which they were together at the magic box before Buffy comes in wanting to burn everything down.
That is a weird little scene. Too.
It is a weird little. Well, it's setting up Triangle, which is next week. The tension between Willow and Anya,
and I just hate that.
Yeah. No, it does. It doesn't fit in this scene. It does feel a little bit out of place in this episode. But the way that Xander talks to Anya is just always the way that Xander talks to Anya. We never textually acknowledge it as being a problem. And we have this one moment where Anya, says that famous line, I could just hear you all behind my back. That Anya, I dislike her. She is newly human and strangely literal, right? Like that whole thing that she does. So we have that moment here where she is acknowledging that the way that they treat her isn't exactly overflowing with respect, but we don't really get a textual acknowledgement that first of all, that it's a problem for Anya, the way that Xander talks to her. And second of all, that it's a problem for Xander. And third of all, that he needs to make any big declaration to her. So like when this happens, it's not really earned. It's not built up. It just sort of happens. And the fact that this is what happens at the end of an episode that has been about Riley and Buffy feels like it should have a greater significance. But because we haven't built it up at all, I don't know what that significance is exactly supposed to be.
Yeah. I mean, it's supposed to come on the tail end of Xander's growing clarity about Riley and Buffy.
Right.
It's almost like a little coda to the Xander, Buffy, Riley thing, and people, of course, giving the advice they need to hear and all of that. And, Xander saying to Buffy, Buffy brings it up, when Xander calls Buffy on her bullshit with Riley and Buffy calls him right back and says, what about Anya? And I like Xander saying, oh, this is so not about me. Right. But then obviously he has taken that in. And
obviously it's all about him. It's about his love for Captain America. It's all about him.
Yeah. And I mean, and we know that, of course we know that Xander was never super pro Angel. So it makes sense to me that Xander would be Team Riley in a big way. But this is just a little end cap that doesn't
pay off anything.
Doesn't really go anywhere. It's barely set up when Riley comes in to talk to Buffy and Anya is making jokes about after hours hanky-panky at the store. And Xander's like, not the time. And she's like, oh, let's go home then and fool around there. And he's like, actually, I got a thing to do. And what? Like, what?
I don't know.
I don't know.
I don't know.
I don't know.
I don't know. All right. So, Noelle, what are you wearing?
Well, this is clunky AF, but when Buffy and Riley have their, State of the Union in the back of the magic box, Riley's wearing white and Buffy's wearing black. And it's like, yes, we know they are polar opposites in this sad, doomed love story.
Aww,
it's
so
not
sad.
terribly sophisticated as far as a, meaningful wardrobe moment, but it's there.
Yes.
It works. It's great. And of course, we also already talked about Buffy being naked in bed and Spike not caring, but completely caring, you guys.
What are you not wearing this week?
Not wearing, I'll tell you
Hello.
what. Yep. Yep.
All right. So what about girl power?
Oh, not with a girl power bit.
I don't know. I didn't pull a lot of girl power in this episode. Maybe Anya winning at life. Like the punniness of Anya always winning the game of life. Oh, well,
yes.
Anya.
Offering strawberry schnapps to Dawn.
It's
I love.
so funny. Tastes like real ice cream. Like she's figured it out. That's the best.
Know.
Well, no, but it is Anya because Anya talks about, how good she's been for business, for the magic box.
Yeah.
And that, Giles would be in serious tax trouble without her.
He would.
And he tries to deny it, but his face says she's absolutely right.
Oh, right.
Which I enjoy.
Well, he just says, oh, that's a bit of an exaggeration, but it's only a bit of an exaggeration.
Well, his face is 100% like
confirming exactly what she
nailed
said.
it. And that's what's so great about, that's what's one of the many things that's so great about Anya and her saying whatever comes to her mind in whatever way it comes to her mind.
Right.
Is that she's right on a lot of the time. Yeah. I gotta go with Anya. I'll give it to Anya this week.
I love it. All right. What's your favorite part?
Oh my God. Riley and Spike.
Yeah.
All of it. Just all of it.
Great.
I even love the fake out with the plastic steak. I love it. I love, oh my God. When Spike is about to say like, sometimes I think I've got the better deal and sometimes I think you do. And then he's, being all poetic and he's like, oh no, fuck that. You've got it way better than I do. He's trying to be all diplomatic with Riley there, but then he's just like, nope, fuck you.
Nope.
You have a good thing and you have no idea. And then poor Riley, I do feel for him though. And he's like, yeah, I'm the lucky guy. I'm the guy.
Yeah.
Like he's so sad in that moment. And they're both so sad and drinking. And I want more Riley and Spike being drinking buddies. And it will never happen. But I'm just so grateful for what Marty Noxon gave us for the gift.
What could have been. What could have been. I love the moment that Spike has that realization that he's hurt Buffy. Outside of the mixed metaphor vamp nest. I love this moment where you can see the surprise on his face that he didn't figure it would hurt her.
Yeah.
And then as soon as he realizes it hurt her, like he would have done it differently. He wouldn't have done it. He regrets it. And you can see all of that. And I think it's such a beautiful, quick, quiet moment, but so powerfully done. I think it's amazing.
Yeah. Co-signed. If you enjoyed this conversation and would like to join in, come find us on social media. Lani is at Lani Diane Rich on Twitter, and I am at Noelle Aloud on Instagram, and the hashtag is Still Pretty.
This episode of Still Pretty was brought to you by the Chipperish Media producers who support us on Patreon at the power producer level. These people are the reason why Still Pretty is coming to you free and ad-free right now. So thank you to our May producers, Abigail, Alice, Crimson Glass, Erica, Jonathan, Kristen, Sarah, and Shelley. And this week's special message for our power producers, I'm in love with you. Powerfully, painfully in love.
To find out how you too can support Chipperish Media, visit patreon.com/chipperish. Other ways to show your support: write a great review on Apple Podcasts, tell your friends about the show, or cover for the weepy chicken within.
We'll be back next time with Triangle, the 11th episode of Season 5. Until then, ain't love grand?